cheat sheet on him with all of the background information I could find on the internet. I knew that Alan had spent more than 15 years managing a firm that had grown from a small single managed fund of $5 million to one with listings on the London, Canadian, and Hong Kong stock exchanges. He is an active participant in the World Economic Forum and holds 2 honorary doctorate degrees. He has lived and worked in the United States, Canada, France, and most recently, Hong Kong. He was a big name in the local finance community, and nearly everyone I met had a story to tell about how they thought he had made his money. A combination of jealousy, envy, and mystery surrounded Alan as those around him in Vietnam fueled rumors that Alan's investment strategies involved theft, money laundering, and corruption. Several people speculated that his source of capital was the Triad in Hong Kong, a well-known Chinese mafia group. But if Alan's reputation was so terrible in Vietnam, how was he able to continue raising so much money from some of the most reputable investors abroad, all of whom claimed to do intensive due diligence checks on their partners? Before I could even take the first sip of my wine, Alan wasted no time and said, "Kimberly, right? Yeah, you are famous here in Vietnam. You wrote the book about the sex industry. I heard many stories about you working as a hostess. I have friends who know you from those days. You're a brave girl." I nervously took a sip of wine, realizing that Alan had done his due diligence on me. He went on to tell me that he had skimmed the introduction of my book, Dealing in Desire. He told me that he respected the ways that I had to get my hands dirty to dig deep for that book. Before I could even divert the conversation to the topic of my new book project and why I wanted to interview him, he cut to the chase, saying, "I know you know how we do business in Vietnam, so tell me, how can I help you?" I responded by telling Alan that I was back in Southeast Asia doing research for a new book project about foreign investment in frontier markets. As a sociologist, I am primarily interested in understanding how people like him finesse risky frontier markets. The first 30 minutes of our conversation were quite boring. Alan gave me his well-rehearsed public relations spiel about his humble beginnings as a small fund and the hustle to survive in this market. He told me the same story I'd heard probably 100 times from other folks that I'd interviewed about Vietnam's market potential as one of the fastest-growing markets in the region. He was just here riding the wave of Vietnam's rapidly growing economy. I politely nodded my head, and when he finished, I asked him, "As I understand it, bribery and corruption are par for the course here in Vietnam and also in Myanmar, another market I am studying. So how are you able to raise funds from investors who have to comply with strict laws around bribery and corruption?" Alan stopped, put his glass of wine down on the table, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked me, "So you want to know my trade secrets?" "No," I explained to him. "I am not a journalist interested in writing up a story about any one person. I am an academic, here to interview hundreds of people to understand broader patterns, processes, and practices of how different people finesse these markets." He condescendingly replied, "There is a saying in the business world, those who cannot do, teach. The first thing I tell all of my employees is, take your fancy Ivy League degrees and leave them at the door." He went on to tell me how business school professors waste so much time teaching students how to build predictive models to forecast or calculate market risks or performance. But that was all bullshit because there are too many unpredictable variables in Vietnam. I pressed him on what mattered, and he told me 2 things that would change the entire course of my research. First, he said, "To make money anywhere in Asia, you need to master the art of playing in the gray. That is a craft. The people who can play in the gray," he explained, "know how to finesse the very boundary between legal and illegal activity. They are front-running the market and the law, getting ahead of the formal regulatory process by starting to build or operate without the proper permits, registration, or tax receipts, but with the tacit protection of officials who are often lubricated by gifts or bribes. That is what makes this a frontier or emerging market." Second,